Welcome to Crafts and Minis. Too much fun. I've been getting after that hashtag hobby streak, and this is the video of the second week of 2020 where I got after it just a little bit every day in the hobby. Now, this week I think I just counted 43 minis were able to get painted, all to varying degrees of involvement in painting the mini, and I'll show you that as we go along. But I just wanted to show you, this is what can happen if you just take that time every day. Now, to be fair, I had a couple days where there's snow days, so I didn't have anything else to do besides minis. Didn't have to go out, which was awesome. So I wanted to show you, though, just a few things I was able to get done. Now, when I say varying degrees of investment in painting each mini, you can see first some of the very simple ones I did. So this is from WizKids. It's a fire elemental, and I think they come two a pack. In fact, I know they come two a pack. And these I very simply did that Zenithal Prime, black all around with white from the top. And you can see like the two tones of purple. That darker is simply where their black primer wasn't as covered up by the white primer. And I just did one coat of Purple Lake, which is a color of acrylic artising from Dalarani FW inks. And they worked out really well. Now, I did the same for the bigger fire elementals that I think just came out in December, which they turned out pretty good. These big ones aren't my favorite sculpt, actually. I really like the smaller sculpts. The bigger one's okay. I mean, medium size on the right, large size on the left, which is great. And just a reminder, I don't have the grass tufts on the bases, which I will eventually add. I like to dull coat these, seal them first before I add those. So that's just a reminder. Now, you notice, though, these are done up just like that Thanos bobblehead with a flaming skull head that I did from last week, because someday I'm going to show you how all those work together. But I mean, you know, purple fire is the common theme, which is awesome. So I got those done. Now, I had 12 of the purple fire guys, and or the fire elementals on the medium-sized bases. And I didn't want to do them all purple. So instead, I also did some up just like normal fire. Normal fire. It's magic. So there's nothing normal about it. But I tried to do, you know, the yellow, orange, red combo. And I used a combination of Citadel contrast paints because I was just messing around with those. I hadn't used the orange and the yellow yet of those. Over a Zenithal Prime. And then actually I did come back and use some yellow paint from P3, Privateer Press, to do some touch-ups. And their like Hearthfire or Heartfire orange color to do some dry brushing basically. And that worked out really well. And I really like how those turned out. So those will just be fire elementals of some sort in games. I also only painted one single human figure, and I don't actually know where this wizard came from. I mean, I know I got it secondhand, which was awesome. Actually, my gamer garage sale haul that I went to and got a bunch of stuff. This is one of the minis that I got there. And he's really fun. He's ready for adventuring. You can tell because he has his kit, his backpack and stuff. And then, you know, I love teal, so that's why he got the kind of garb he has on, but he's a good old time. So that was fun. Also, I did a Reaper mini, a Behir. And, sorry, he turned out pretty good. So what's cool about him is that, you know, there is some actual differentiation on his blue, like a little bit lighter, a little bit darker, all that. Well, that actually is just the Citadel contrast paint. And then I did like extreme highlights on him, you know, up to the just stark white. And especially here on this part on his back, that fin that goes around. I really liked that. And I'm like, you know what? I could do some starker highlights on stuff. And you can already see I did that on some other things. But the Behir was fun. This model is a little rough to put together and paint. It's all twisty, so it's kind of difficult to paint in some spots because it's so twisty, you know, especially if you got to paint the base afterwards on the inside. But, I mean, it's fine. It is difficult. It's just not that readable of a mini on a table. Like, it's a coiled up dude that it's kind of cool seeing all the hands together. But if I hadn't done the white stark highlights on those hands, it wouldn't have, those would all get lost if they were all the same color in there. And so, like, I know Gale Force 9, I think, does another Behir mini that is stretched out a little bit more, I believe. But, you know, it's fine. It represents, once you say it, people are like, oh, okay, yeah, it's kind of like, you know, a dragon with a bunch of legs. But I don't know. The mini itself, I just had primed and ready to go, and that's why I got it done. And I wanted to test out that blue contrast paint. So that's what happened here. And that's just another recommendation. Remember, have minis on hand, ready to go, and you never know when inspiration's going to strike. Now, speaking of the stark highlights, that's where these guys come in. So I did a video about Battle Claw. It's just a short 3-minute video about this little range of toys that I thought were good for the tabletop, and they are. So this is on a 1-inch base. Those are those counting chips that teachers use to teach counting. The specific type, like if you just Google counting chips or look up on Amazon counting chips, they're not all 1 inches. They're not all this specific type, but I do a video on that also. But I really like these, and you know, the face was very goblin-y to me. Like the longer face, tiny eyes, big ears. There's something goblin-y about it. So I didn't know how I was going to paint these guys. I thought maybe I was going to just do them brown. Like if you look at a bunch of my previous paint jobs, I did a lot of brown. Now, that's because I'm just in love with this sepia wash from Vallejo that comes in the big jugs, which I've shown you before. And it's just super easy just to do that. Well, guess what? I didn't use that. Okay, let me make sure I'm not lying. I don't think I used that at all on anything this week, which is a first. To have this type of output, paint 43 minis and not use that sepia wash, that's crazy. So back to this dude. I wanted to do just something a little different, and I thought I was just going to do him brown. I didn't know, and then I started thinking, you know what? I love teal. I got these different teal colors. I've got some brown ink left in a blister pack piece of plastic. I use those plastic covers from blister packs, you know, that you buy minis in, that are like a little tray. I use those for palettes and to mix up washes and all of that. So I added some indigo acrylic artist ink to that, and that's what his back is done in, brown with indigo mixed together. And then I'm like, you know what? Let's just see how far I can push these highlights. Now, up close, that's not the best of paint jobs, right? However, when you go far away and you have them on a table and then you have them even in a group, now you're talking my language. Now those stark paint jobs stand out. Even the Behir looks way better from this distance than it does up close because it's readable, right? Like sometimes you got to push the highlights to make minis readable on the table so that they stand out just a little bit, right? Now, that's all personal preference, whatever you want to do. But here's what started developing. I mentioned how their faces look like goblins. And then I'm like, okay, I got this dark color scheme now that I really like. So a story started developing in my head that I'll eventually probably do a story on. And I'm like, you know what? These could be like the werewolf version, basically, of goblins. And I'm like, you know what? These goblins that I got from GW, of course, all have the little bad moon symbol. I don't know if it's still called that in Warhammer Land, Age of Sigmar. But I have a bunch of those with the bad moon symbol, the moon, on the shield. And I'm like, you know what? I can just make up my own goblins that worship the moon. And these, it makes so much sense, right? Werewolves, full moon, goblins worship the moon. So goblins becoming these werewolves, which is awesome. Now, I also had this toy. So this is a Funko toy. It's not a Funko Pop though. Funko does like a bunch of different toys. And this is from the show. And when I tell you, you might already know it. Troll Hunters. And Troll Hunters had a bunch of toys that came out a few years ago. And this was one of the Funko toys that came in a mystery box. So you couldn't actually like go grab this exact toy off the shelf for sure. As far as I know, I think you had to buy a mystery box and get it. But I picked this up on eBay, I think. And I painted this guy. I knew he was going to go with these guys, right? Like I always kind of paired them up because of their stance. But then I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm going to paint him up in a similar way, which worked out really well, I thought. I really like him. There you go. And yes, he's cartoony. He's cartoony as all get out. However, as like the big either avatar of the moon or the big creature in the Goblin Forest that causes the werewolf stuff, the lycanthropy. And maybe it's not even related to the moon, but the goblins think it is. Or maybe that's just the curse that this thing carries with it. I don't know. I got to figure all that out. I'll do a video possibly later on all of that, but I just loved how that worked together. And that's how I think. So I think, okay, and if you kind of see, I buy things in 12s, or I group them in 12s. So I have 12 of the little, I'm calling them lunar brutes, little loonies, lunar brutes. And so I got 12 of those. Got the big old guy to go with him. And so now I have a lot of variety and encounters I can run. I mean, of course, a party can come across just a few of the little brutes. That's fine. Or once I get my goblins painted, I can have brutes come with the goblins. Or, you know, the big boss fight, they have the big old guy come out. It's awesome. But all sorts of good stuff. So that's that. Now, I just love it because it was a different, usually, like, especially because I use that sepia wash on everything, a lot of my colors that come across in the minis are very similar, but I did some different stuff this week, and that's where I wanted to show you this guy. Oh gosh, it's like I had to strain to pick him up because he's so big. Oh my goodness. Look at that tongue. Oh man. So cool. Okay, I'm just going to let you look at it for a second because that's all I've been doing. Sorry, is that prideful? I don't know. I just really love this, how it turned out. Now, you might not recognize this. This is a toy, and I'm sorry I don't remember if this is from Safari Limited or one of the other toy manufacturers, but he doesn't come on a base. I mounted him on a base. He comes green. Okay, so I mounted him on the base, and this is like a 100mm base, like 4 inches, right? And by the way, I love these MDF bases for the larger figures. I love, of course, the counting chips, which are great, but also I've really been getting into fender washers. Now, those are the most expensive option, but they're great. So these 1-inch ones, and then I've got 2-inch fender washers also. But this guy, I don't know, when I did the Zenithal Prime and it came out really good. Like his back was awesome because like the areas that were supposed to be darker in the creases here and on his scars and all that, those were darker. And then the higher parts were lighter because of the priming. And so I'm like, I got to take advantage of that. And so again, I messed around and I used the orange Citadel contrast paint all around him. And he was just a big old orange thing with a little differentiation. That wasn't enough. So I wish I could tell you, oh yeah, this was just one thick coat and that's all. No, I worked on him a bunch. I got out also a Citadel wash of orange. I got out that P3 bright orange Hearthfire, whatever it's called. I did. Now the red is the one of the darker Citadel contrast reds. And what I was going for here is on his extremity. So on his belly, on his chest and belly, and on the edges of his hands and feet, and then tail, I wanted it to stand out a bit. So I'm like, you know what? He's just going to go orange to red. And that's really cool. Oh yeah, and his nose is going to do the same thing. And, that was just really fun. I'd not done that before. I also put red around the spines, which worked out pretty well. And then, of course, I did the poor man's cheating of black lining. I used a dark wash at the base of the spine too. And it settled into those creases really nice to make it pop. And I just really like him. He turned out well. Now, I have 2 of these, right? So this is the first one I've painted. The second one is going to be a mount. So there's going to be a creature riding this thing. And you can see that, right? Like, especially if I modify this spine right here, maybe I might have to do 2, but modify this, like just cut it down a bit and put on the saddle for a creature to mount it. It's going to be super cool. Okay, so that's that guy. Now, oh no, Dragons last. Dragons last. Oh, I mentioned in one of my videos, I'm getting back into Kings of War. I have an Abyssal Armies for Kings of War that the one troop type called Fleshlings, they're like the humans that went bad, aren't in the game anymore as far as I can tell in 3rd edition. So I can use those models for another army, great, but I still had the Abyssals, and I've been wanting to get into Abyssal Dwarves, right? So the bad dwarves. And they're a lot of fun. So what I did was I already made up and based and got ready by having them primed some units for that Abyssal Dwarf army. But what's cool in Kings of War is you can have some of the same units cross over. So I can use some of my Abyssal stuff that I already have in my Abyssal Dwarf army. And so what I did was made these. So I'm trying to remember the exact name in the game of what these will be. I want to say they're like lesser stone golems, lesser abyssal stone golems or something like that. Basically, in the game, it's all about base size. So they have preferred model counts, meaning how many miniatures you have on a base, but it's all about the base size. So the base size for this is 50 millimeters by 150 millimeters, right? So you're supposed to fit 3. I mean, like if you had the most minis on here that they suggest, it would be 3 minis that each fit on a 50 millimeter by 50 millimeter square base. Well, those are great models from Privateer not Privateer, from Mantic Games. Love the folks at Mantic. I just already was going in this direction of these big beefy guys from Reaper. So these are Reaper Bones minis of they're like rock elementals, stone golems, but I didn't put their heads on. Instead, you can tell if you're familiar with GW fantasy stuff, Warhammer. These are the belly plates from Ogre Kingdoms, from the ogres. So ogres belly plates that I did up in a bronze, and then did a touch of that technical paint from GW to turn them green a little bit. But I did a dark wash on them first, then did the technical paint. And then the bases actually fit the theme of my Abyssals. These bases aren't done, by the way. You can tell some of the edges, excuse me, aren't painted. But, and I also put some flocking, just a little bit of flocking on the bases too, to tie them in. But I love that kind of red, earthy, Martian looking sand. And they look really sharp on the table. Like that base stands out. And then I can do like my teal, like the corrosion for the patina of the teal, the verdigris. It's really cool. That verdigris color on bronze is one of my favorite effects. I actually have done up a bunch of gargoyles from Mantic in bronze and then did that verdigris color over to make them just all look like they're these animated statues, bronze gargoyles that have come to life, but they already had the verdigris, but now they're being called into battle or whatever. But these actually technically could be used, and when I like to base them this way, this could be its own unit, and then you could do 2 of these together for 1 unit also, for a larger size unit. So those worked out really well, and I'm going to have to post those on the Facebook page for the Slow Grow League, or the Slow Grow just army for Kings of War. Now, that's the Kings of War stuff. Those aren't official Kings of War minis. Thankfully, Mantic Games, even though they make some really nice minis, they're starting to make much better minis. They are very open to other companies' miniatures in their games. I went to Adepticon before and used a mostly non-Mantic miniature army. Now, to be fair, a lot of those units don't have Mantic equivalents, like the Fleshlings, where I have 120 of those painted up. Don't. But that's enough about that. Dragons last. Thanks for the reminder in the comments last video to put dragons last. This is also a toy. This is, I think, from Safari Limited. The other company out there, I think, what is it called? Schleich, that make these like big dragons. I think both of these, I think that orange guy and this is a jungle dragon from Safari Limited, jungle dragon. I'm calling it a forest dragon. And it's just really cool, right? Like, so look, it's got all the vine work in the legs. And then it's got, you know, mushrooms growing out of it, which is so cool. And the little eyes, you know, like on a tree stump or a tree trunk. And then, you know, all the vinage and leaves. It's just so cool. And so I'm like, you know what? This is going to be a two-tone mini, basically, green and brown. And actually, if you go and look at this mini online, this isn't terribly different than the original paint job. Although this part here on its neck and into its chest and belly is painted up different. But you know what? I'm not just going to use the original manufacturer paint job. I got to paint it myself. And he turned out really good. Now, when I posted this on Twitter, it was mentioned that it looked like he looked really good. And I said, well, I put a little extra effort in it, and they said it showed, which is awesome, because I hope so. And, of course, it's got red eyes because dragons and all my monsters have red eyes, which is a good time. See? Everything has red eyes. That's like for an encounter, for a monster or whatever. Now, I really like that. This is a really cool mini. And again, I think, let me see. Actually, that might be like 120 millimeter base now that I look at it. So it's a big old guy. But so fantastic, right? Just a really fun dragon. And actually, the D&D group I'm playing in, I'm not running a game right now, but I'm playing in, faced a copper dragon that was hiding in a forest, you know, and shenanigans ensued, of course. But when someone in my group saw this, that I mentioned it's a forest dragon, he thought like, oh no, I thought we were done having to go face that dragon we just faced, and now we got to face it again. And I'm like, no. That was a copper dragon. This is just a totally different one. And I had it ready. So that's the thing. 43 miniatures painted in a week. I did actually prime some of these this week. The fire guys, I ended up priming and getting those ready to go. And I think maybe the wizard too, because I had a nice day of weather this week where I was able to do that. And then I had some snow days, crazy stuff. But altogether, the lesson here was, again, I wouldn't have been able to paint all these if I didn't have them based, primed, ready to go on the shelf. Now, this is not normal. This is a huge week for me because I did have those snow days. But, you know, even if I wouldn't have been able to get half of it done, I would have been very happy with just this amount of production over here, right? Even if I didn't get the Kings of War stuff done or all these little lunar brutes, the rest would have been just a fantastic week for me. And this week I really pushed myself. So that's, I guess, my encouragement, and what I learned this week in doing the hashtag Hobby Streak Challenge is, if you're going to do it, you know, or if you're going to commit to this hobby, take some risks. Go outside of your comfort zone. Use some techniques that you're not that familiar with, and that's the only way you're going to learn. Like, these don't have a bunch of texture on them. They're super smooth. And so that was a challenge for me, right? That was a challenge. But I ended up really liking that challenge, and I found my own way to do them quick, fast, and dirty, as I like to do with my minis. So that's this week. That's 2 weeks into the hashtag Hobby Streak Challenge for 2020. I appreciate you watching. Appreciate all the comments and the likes. Everybody has been amazing, and it's so fun to interact. Follow me on Twitter if you want to interact there, which is a great time. If you follow me on Twitter, you actually get to see every day the updates for the hashtag Hobby Streak Challenge, the work in progress shots of what I'm working on. And so I'm just really excited to get after it again this coming week, and we'll see what I'm able to do. I have a few things on the table that I want to get after, but you never know what strikes. I think something to go with these purple fire guys that I have planned might happen. So we'll see. But I don't want to hold myself to that. I like just have a bunch of stuff ready and see what inspiration strikes. So thanks for watching this video. Hope you're having a good 2020, especially when it comes to the hobby. And I just want to really encourage you. It's never too late to start a #HobbyStreak challenge. Go get after your hobby.